What's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazy Frankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 12 4 key game picks. Let's take a look at the current playoff seedings in both the AFC and NFC conference before I get into my 4 key game picks for week number 12 here. Let's begin in the AFC. Not much has changed in terms of the standings right now. New England, the Patriots are still the 1 seed. The Broncos, even though they lost big time to the Rams, they're still the 2nd seed and currently still holding on to first place in the AFC West division. Remember, they're now tied with Kansas City because Kansas City won last week, so that could change. That could flip-flop going into the next few weeks. But right now, the Denver Broncos currently hold the 2nd seed. The Cincinnati Bengals have moved back to first place in the AFC North division. They are now in the 3rd seed. The Colts are the 4th seed at the moment, even though they lost, but the Houston Texans are not that far behind them. The Kansas City Chiefs still clinging on to the 5th seed. They're not that far behind the Broncos, as I said before. And Pittsburgh is now the 6th seed. In the NFC, the Cardinals still clinging to first place. They are the 1 seed right now. They're still currently the 1 seed. The Lions are still the 2nd seed. They're still leading the NFC North Division, but they are tied now with the Green Bay Packers. The Philadelphia Eagles are still the 3rd seed, but they are also tied with the Cowboys for first place in that NFC East Division. The Atlanta Falcons now have moved to the 4th seed. They are now in first place in the NFC South Division because the Saints lost last week. The Packers still the 5th seed, but that could flip-flop next week, determining in the outcome of their games between them and between Green Bay and Detroit in their respective games. And the Dallas Cowboys are still clinging to the 6th seed. They're coming off a bye week. That really has not changed. Now, quick thoughts on Week 11. Like I said, how did the Broncos really lose to the Rams here? Offense-wise, they did not. Both sides of the ball, offense and defense, right now, they're not in sync. I don't know what's going on with this Denver Bronco team, but obviously they're hurting. They're hurting big time. I mean, they already lost one of their players due to one of their key players due to a concussion. I forgot who that player was, but that really is now injuries are kind of becoming a factor now. They already have one of their players out for the season, and now with one of their other players that got hurt, who knows how long that player's going to be out, and they're really suffering on both sides of the ball. The best teams right now in the NFL. The New England Patriots winning big. They basically are tearing it up in their last few games. They put up in their last 2 games now over 90 to 100 points. The Packers are the same. They did in 2 games they put up over 100 points, scoring over 50 in their last 2 games. And the Arizona Cardinals are still in first place and only 1 loss at the moment, despite not having Carson Palmer as he's out for the season. But Drew Stanton did a fantastic job last week against the Lions. So yeah, the 3 best teams right now in the NFL are the Arizona Cardinals, the Green Bay Packers, and the New England Patriots. They're definitely the top 3 teams in the NFL right now. Green Bay, Detroit, they're tied for first place in that NFC North division. That division's getting tighter. The Eagles and Cowboys are tied for first place in that NFC East. So, yep. And that Thanksgiving game, that matchup coming up is next week. So that's going to be huge. And as far as the rest of the NFL, what happened in week 11, of course, with Denver losing and Kansas City winning now, that's also, I think, a first place tie. I think they're tied for first place. Yeah, both teams are at 7-3. Don't forget, you can't count out the San Diego Chargers right now. They're 6-4. They're 1 game back between both those teams. So yeah, a lot of divisions are looking tight right now, and it's going to be. And like I said, this is going to be a great, exciting finish down the stretch. Of course, and speaking of division still, remember Indianapolis lost big last week to the Patriots. Now, in Houston beating the Browns, the Texans now are only 1 game back of Indianapolis. So really, we're expecting some tight finishes down the stretch. And of course, in that tight AFC North division, the Bengals still clinging on to that first place at 6-3-1. That tie really is helping them, but Pittsburgh is in second place right now. So really, this is getting interesting in that AFC North division, as every team now is jockeying for position in that division to see who's going to win it. But anyways, enough chit chat. Let's get into Week 12. This week's 4 key game picks, the AFC North is going to receive a lot of love from me because I'm going to talk up and a little bit of the NFC South, except for one game, which I'm going to talk about right now. So let's talk about this. Key game number 1, the Cleveland Browns at the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are a 3-point favorite in this one, and why not? I mean, the way they're coming off a huge win over the Panthers against the Panthers last week. They know they got a tough task because they know Cleveland is not a joke. But for Cleveland here, they will have an added bonus. Josh Brown is coming. Their wide receiver is coming back from a suspension he had earlier in the season. I think it was a substance. I don't remember why he was suspended for. No, I know he's not going to be in football shape because he missed 10 games, and that's already half the season already. And it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into the system with Brian Hoyer. Now, Brian Hoyer didn't have a good game at all last week. And no, if anybody's going to be wondering if they should have brought in Johnny Manziel to help out on offense, no. Brian Hoyer didn't play all that well, but he's been playing magnificent all season. And that's really helped the Browns. I just think for the Browns' sake, what's hurting them right now is they don't really have much of a running game. And that's why That's why they kind of picking Atlanta as a favorite here, because I think of their running game. And Stephen Jackson right now is having a really decent season. And you know the Falcons do play power football with him. And I think that's going to be one of the key factors why I'm going to pick the Atlanta Falcons in this one. I think the running game is going to be the key in this one, because they know the Browns don't have a running game. Their running backs really are not all that great. But really, their wide receivers, I mean, Brian Hoyer's going to have to really throw the ball if they want a chance to win. And if they can get Josh Gordon going here into this offense, I think that could help. But I just think with no running game for the Browns here, I think that's going to hurt them. And that's why I'm going to pick the Atlanta Falcons in this one. Falcons over the Browns. Key game number 2, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Houston Texans. Cincinnati finally getting back on track after really dismal weeks of barely any offense. I mean, you lose to the Browns a couple of weeks ago, but really it was a must win for the Cincinnati Bengals, because they know the division is really tight in the AFC North, and that was a game they had to have. And New Orleans really just played poorly last week. I can't explain why. Really, right now they lost 2 consecutive home games, and really they're in deep trouble in that division. But Houston here, coming off big wins. They went with the rookie quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick was benched. I think his name was Ryan Talent. I think it was Ryan Mallett. There you go. Ryan Mallett. Ryan Mallett came in at quarterback last week, and he threw a couple of touchdown passes, which really helped them a lot. I mean, that's one of the things that Houston really got it going here, because really, Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, he did a fair job offensively, but obviously his last few games he didn't play well. So Ryan Mallett came in. I know a lot of you are saying they could have gone with Ryan Mallett the majority of the season. It was a little too early to tell, because Ryan Fitzpatrick has been in the league for a while, and he was probably the only veteran they got next to Arian Foster. But obviously, defense-wise, this is where the Texans have done very well. J.G. Watt's probably having the best season of his career, and he's still young. I mean, he's got a lot of years ahead of him. And he had another touchdown reception. Isn't that something? This guy really is something. I've never seen a player this talented on both sides of the ball. So that's why I'm going to say that's why Houston is a 2-point favorite, but this game is a toss-up. I expect this game to be tight. But really right now, it's going to determine if the Bengals offense can continue to stay intact in this game. But I'm going to go with the Houston Texans in this one, because it's really their defense. And they need to get Arian Foster going here. Obviously, he is not playing all that well this season. I know he's kind of been playing hurt this year, but they need to get him going here. And I think the Houston Texans here, they know this is a game they got to have because they want to keep pace with the Indianapolis Colts. But I know the Bengals need to have this one too because they're barely clinging on to first place. They're barely leading the Steelers by virtue of that tie they have, even though technically Pittsburgh's 7-4, but Cincinnati's 6-3-1. But who wins this game here? I'm going to pick the Houston Texans here. I just think defense is going to be big in this game, and they know, and Cincinnati knows this defense is not to be reckoned with. They know this is going to be tough for them. So I expect this game to be tight though. This will be very close, but I think the Houston Texans will barely win this game, probably by a field goal. I'm going to pick the Texans over the Bengals. Key game number 3, the Baltimore Ravens at the New Orleans Saints. I don't know how the Saints are a 3.5-point favorite, but that's how the odds makers have them. Saints are 3.5-point favorite at home. Baltimore's coming off a bye week. And I expect this game to be tight all the way. Joe Flacco and their offense, really, they're playing very, very well. Even though they lost big to the Steelers a couple of weeks ago, but obviously they're playing a little bit better. And they know the New Orleans Saints defense has been terrible all year. I expect Baltimore to attack that defense. Obviously, defense-wise for the Saints, they're just not that good. And offense-wise, I don't know. They really did not play all that well offensively. Drew Brees really had probably maybe one of his worst games in a long time. And like I kind of don't understand how the Saints are a 3.5-point favorite even though they're at home here. But they're just not playing that well. And this is why I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens here. It's really the Saints defense now. They're really just not playing all that well. I mean, they should have beaten the 49ers a couple of weeks ago, but obviously they didn't. And you get embarrassed at home by Cincinnati last week. And you got Baltimore, and you got the Ravens coming up here on Monday night. And the Ravens are playing pretty good football here. I don't know how the Saints are going to counter this. And that's why too many questions on both sides of the ball for the Saints is the reason why I'm going to pick the Ravens here in this game. I just think right now the Saints are just not playing that well football, and that is why I'm going to pick the Ravens in this one. I'm going to pick the Ravens over the Saints. And now, finally, out of the AFC North now, let's move west now to the NFC West. A big one here. The Cardinals at the Seahawks. Now, the Cardinals still currently clinging to a 3. They're ahead of the Seahawks by 3 games right now, and that's huge. But let's see how well Drew Stanton and that offense can play in Seattle. Now, remember, Larry Fitzgerald got hurt last week, so he's going to be a huge question mark going into this one. Now, the Seahawks here, I know they lost by 4 points to the Chiefs last week. I mean, they played fairly well, but obviously their best wasn't good enough to beat the Chiefs last week. But the odds makers have the Seahawks here as a 6.5-point favorite. I probably would say maybe a little that number should be down a little bit more. I don't know how they have them as a 6.5-point favorite, but I know they're at home here. Now remember last year when these two teams met, the Cardinals went into Seattle and beat them. But what happened? No, Seahawks know they got that on their mind. Now the Seahawks know they have that on their minds now, and they know the Cardinals are playing much better than they were last year. It's going to be tough to say who wins this game here, but I expect this game to be pretty close. But really right now, the Cardinals really don't have much of a running game. See, that's going to be one key factor here. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to pick the Seattle Seahawks here because of their running game. Marshawn Lynch is playing much better, even though I know Marshawn Lynch got held a bit last week against Kansas City. But I think because their running game, I see the Seahawks winning here. And obviously, it's going to come down to time of possession here. The more the Cardinals have the ball, the more the defense is going to have to really find a way to stop them because really, they know the Seahawks defense. They know that Arizona's offense is good. But I just think time of possession is going to be key in this one. And the running game for Seattle is the reason why I'm going to go with them. Because the Cardinals really don't have much of a running game. The Seattle Seahawks do. But I expect this game to be tight all the way. No question about it. But I think Seattle is going to win here. I'm going to pick Seattle in an upset here. It'll be very close. Probably I'm going to say Seattle wins by a field goal as well, like I did with one of the other games I talked about. So this one I expect to be tight all the way, no question. It'll be by a field goal. I'm going to say the Seahawks barely beat the Cardinals here. Well, anyways, that's it for my 4 key game picks for this week. Go to thesportblog.blogspot.com for all of my Week 12 picks. And until then, I will see you. Enjoy your football weekend, and I will see you all next week for my Thanksgiving edition of my 4 key game picks for Week 13. Until then, take care, and I'll see you all next week.